Can't hear you.
Button and the other one pops up. You know what I'm saying? Once again, we here live and we are ready to go with GA for Justice with your host, the community activist, Miss Georgia Allen.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Thursday. How about that? Yeah. All right. High noon on Thursday. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am Georgia F. Allen with GA for Justice every single solitary Thursday at 12 o'clock noon. As always, we do have a principle of KWANZAA today, UJIMA, collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our community together and make our community's problems our problems and solve them together. Today's topic is fight or flight. And our scripture today is put on the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. That's from Ephesians 6:11. And greetings, greetings, greetings. Yes, it's Thursday, and I am Georgia F. Allen with GA for Justice. As always, we want to thank Mr. Henderson Vaughn, a.k.a. Captain 85, a.k.a. the Dream Maker, who has opened up the airwaves to bring our listening audience a conversation. A simple conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. Disclaimer, as most of you are aware, I have worked in civil rights and have been a community activist for decades. Therefore, the various positions that I may take are mine and mine alone. I do not speak on behalf of any groups or any organizations. With that being said, to my audience today, armor up. Don't just take flight, learn how to fight. And I say that to you because it's been 16 days ago. Many of you had your hearts broken. You got into a funk. Some of you even today cannot believe what happened. And you're still having trouble pulling yourself out of your depression. Today's show is about fight or flight. Keep in mind life and what you do with life is a choice. Keep that in mind. We're going to all have life for a certain period of time, for a season, but what we do with our lives is a choice. Will you fight or will you take flight? And if you fight, how will you choose to fight? If you take flight, where will you go? Those are basically your choices. Some of you want to fight because you are so angry about the outcome of the election on November the 5th. You are so angry. You feel like you've been cheated. You're disgusted. You're defeated. And you just cannot seem to pull yourself out of this funk. Well, I too believe that you can fight. As a matter of fact, that's counted in my DNA. But what you're going to have to decide on is how are you going to fight? Are you going to fight, which many people do, by talking, complaining, going from what they say, pillow to post, fussing and complaining. And you don't see any changes. And the reason why you don't see any changes is because you're constantly putting that negative message out there, that angry message out there, that disappointed message out there. And when you put that out there into the atmosphere, when you put it out into the universe, you're giving it and passing it on to someone else. And then they take that same negative message and you think you're fighting, but you're really complaining. That's all you're doing. You're basically complaining. So, but you do have options. With every single solitary election, there are always options. Sometimes you're going to win. Sometimes you're not going to win. If you notice, I didn't say the other word. I didn't say the L word because I don't like using that word. I say sometimes we win and sometimes we're not going to win, or sometimes we may not win. But I don't use that L word. And the reason why I don't use that L word is because to me, that is another negative message that you put into the atmosphere with regards to your candidate. So I try to be careful about the words that I use. And don't get me wrong, I can get just as upset and angry as anybody else at one time or another. But there are times when we have to have real conversations about what took place. We have to have real conversations with regards to how things transpired. We have to have real conversations with regards to whether or not we did things in a manner that would give us the outcome that we wanted. We have to ask questions about who was involved in the election. Were the right people at the table? Did the media choose one candidate over another because they felt like they could get more clicks, more increase their viewership because they spend a lot more time with someone, or they use their messages a lot more for one candidate than they did for another? So there are a number of things that took place throughout this campaign. You have one candidate that the whole entire nation felt that they should ask her for everything, while they asked the other candidate for absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But this group came and said, I don't think you work hard enough for our concerns and our needs. So they're spending time asking those questions. And they're spending time saying, well, I don't think that plan is going to work. But the other guy doesn't have a plan. So what do? Do you fight or do you take flight? Because those were your options when the campaign was going on. And those are still your options right now. Do you fight? And what I found is that there were a lot of people out there doing this particular election process who spent a tremendous amount of time basically doing nothing that was beneficial. Nothing that was really beneficial. One group complained because they felt like I'm just going to sit at home and I'm not going to go out there because I don't feel like the Middle East is being treated properly. Really? Really? And so you're going to put your family and your friends at risk with someone who absolutely hate the Middle East. Now that's an option. That is an option. But the other option was to fight to at least get someone in office who would work, at least listen and try to work to your benefit and not to your detriment. But guess what? You chose. Hello, Bernita. How you doing? You're going to get to work and fight. We need somebody out here fighting, sweetheart. But you chose to sit there and complain and say, oh, well, I'm just going to boycott. I'm going to do this. Well, guess what? When things don't go the way you want them to go, as I said in my previous show, lose my number. Lose my number. Because just like me, you too had an opportunity to work in your best interests, even though everything, you weren't going to get everything. Well, guess what? Nobody does. Nobody does. So I suggest that you learn how to fight better. Obviously, the role that you took is not going to be in your best interest. So, do we fight or take flight? Now, if we're going to take flight, are you planning on going there permanently, or you trying to go somewhere temporarily? Because that's an option to take flight. Where do you plan to go? And should you go, do you have family there if you're going to take flight? Do you have any friends there? Or are you just going to go to a strange place because you are just so mad about what took place after this election, during this election, that you're going to take flight? Again, where are you going to go? Where are you going to stay? What's going to happen to the housing or whatever that you have here? If your house is owned, what's going to happen to it? Do you have somebody that can take care of it? Because that's taking flight. When you take flight, you're going to have to make some plans. And you're going to have to settle some things before you come up out of this United States of America. And then, how long do you plan to stay? You're going to stay permanently, or you only plan on staying for 4 years? And what happens when you come back and you find that a lot of things have changed in this nation because someone had the levers of power for 4 years? What if you can't get back into the country? Have you thought about that? Because you can take flight. Oh yeah, you can take flight. But what if your passport is no longer accepted in this nation because you left? And now you think you can come back, but they said, well, we're at capacity, because now you have a new person who's taking charge, and they decided what capacity is. They decided what capacity is. Also, if you're one of those people who were concerned about being deported and decided that you were going to make your selection because you just thought that border wall might work this time around. That border wall might work, but you hadn't considered the fact that the opposition said that he was going to deport everybody. Is that everybody? Or everybody with an accent? Everybody with a certain surname? Who are these everybody's that he's going to deport? Do you fall into the category? If you're taking flight, you may not even need to get a ticket. They may just ship you out. So did you think about that for a moment when you decided how you're going to vote on November the 5th? Because see, it's all about fighting or taking flight. So when I thought about this show today, I was thinking about a lot of the things that had taken place over the last week or so. I thought about what had taken place on the local level. I thought about what took place on the national level. And I thought about the fact that next year we're going to have a statewide campaign going on. And I was thinking, okay, if we got a statewide campaign going on next year, shouldn't we get busy and start fighting? Should we decide right here and right now, if I think it's 100 delegates and 40 senators? How about saying we want 75 of those delegates to be delegates of people that's going to work in our best interest? And those senators, instead of having 40, instead of where we have 40 senators, how about saying we want 30 of those senators to be senators that work in our best interest? So now you got a majority. Not only a majority, you got a pretty super majority with 30, and they only have 10. So if we're going to fight, let's fight to win. The one thing that I noticed with one political party is they fight always to win, and they fight to win everything. And they don't care if they cheat, they don't care if they lie, they don't care about any of that. The other party fight not to lose. As you notice, I try not to use that L word, but that's simply the way they fight. They fight in a manner where, well, let me just get one more seat. Let me just win in this state. Let me just win over here. Instead of saying, let me just win everywhere. I don't want to just win this one seat. I don't want to win just over here. I want to win everywhere, and operate in that mindset, because what you speak can come into fruition. But if you don't speak it, and if all you spoke was, let me just win this one seat, guess what? You were struggling just to get that one seat, and you saw the outcome, because all you were doing was trying to find and get that one seat. Okay, so you weren't fighting for the whole enchilada. You was fighting for a piece. Well, what we need are people who are willing to fight for the whole enchilada. You want it all. And until folks get into the mindset of, I want it all, They're going to constantly be put in a mode of just barely getting across the finish line. One of the fighters that I used to absolutely love was Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali would tell you, I'm going to knock him out in 6. I'm going to knock him out in 3. I'm going to knock him out in 4. He was determined to not just win, but he was determined to defeat any opponent that he had in front of him. And the thing of it is, he didn't want it to take all day to get it done. He didn't feel any need to have a boxing match that would last 10 rounds. Now, of course, the people who were out in the audience, they weren't very happy because, shoot, they wanted to see a bloodbath. They wanted to walk in there and see somebody get pummeled and pummeled and pummeled round after round after round. Muhammad Ali had a mindset is I don't want to get my face messed up because I'm just too doggone pretty. Okay. So if I can knock you out in 3, I'm going to do it in 3. I'm not going to sit here and drag it out for 5 or 6, 7 rounds. And this is what has to be the mindset. If you want to win it all, you got to get in the race, willing to put everything you got in it and expecting to win it all, not expecting to barely get by. And that is what I see a lot with what is going on in politics and what's going on in campaigning. We need some new people working on some of these campaigns. You know, there were a number of campaigns that were lost by a small margin on our school board, on our city council. School board did very well, but city council not so well. And they were lost by small margins. And there were a number of things that took place in those cases. In Virginia Beach, we have elections every year. So I'm always looking for people that are willing to fight, because we have to fight all year, every year, all year long. You know, our elections start somewhere around April. People got to get their paperwork in. They got to announce that they're going to run for office. They got to make sure that they have all their signatures. They got to make sure they file the papers. They got to make sure they file the candidate amount of money that has to be filed. So all of those things have to be done. And we do this year after year after year. So for Virginia, this is an ongoing process all the time. For other states, they may have elections every other year. But in Virginia, we have elections every single solitary year, every year. And if you want to win elections, you can't wait until the last second to decide that you're going to throw your name in the hat. If you want to really be successful continuously, repetitively, a lot of times what we see with these people who decide that they're going to run, they don't have any fight in them. They don't have any real fight in them. So they just kind of throw their name in the hat and hope. And hope. And hope really isn't a true tool to success. It's not. It's not. If you're running for office, you need a little bit more than hope to win an election. So with this fight or flight, one of the things that I like to share is, if you're going to fight, who are you going to fight with? Who are you going to fight with? Are you fighting by yourself? Or do you have a posse that you're fighting along with? Are you fighting with people who are loyal, or are you fighting alongside people that you can't really trust? They sound good. They look good. They smell good. They tell you a whole lot of nice things, and they say, oh, man, you should run for office. You know how many people told somebody that they should run for office? And once those people threw their name in the hat, they never saw those people again. They disappeared on them. Be careful who you listen to. You got something to share, Henderson?
Yeah, that's what happens. As soon as you put your head in the ring, everybody start doing their own thing. And you look one and say, where's everybody that said they were going to help me and support me? You know, so when you do any type of planning of anything, you got to first focus and know that nobody's going to help you. And that's why you got to work harder to make people understand is I'm not in the game, but to win. With or without you, I'm going to win.
Absolutely.
That's the mindset you got to have.
Absolutely. And we saw a lot of people that we thought might have a chance to win around the area. And you're thinking, wow, you know, I thought they might have a real chance of winning. You know, they get a strong name recognition. They know a lot of people. But at the end of the day, they did not win. And so maybe there wasn't enough fight in them. Maybe they didn't do the little things well, like affiliating with community people. So fighting is not just about the fist to blows. Fighting is also about how do you interact with others? Can you relate to them and can they relate to you? Because I hear over and over again, I'm not feeling him. I'm not feeling her. Okay. That means there's a disconnect. You're talking to somebody, but they're not hearing you because they don't feel anything in your spirit, in your heart, that says that you genuinely care about them. But the other thing that a lot of people see is they don't feel like you genuinely care about the office that you're running for. Yeah, you're running for that office, but you don't seem like a person that are willing to sit in that chair and fight for the people who you asked to elect you to that position. That's the other thing. When you're deciding to run, you got to have a little bit of fight in you. And that fight is not, you know, the eloquent words that you say or the type of clothing that you wear or whether or not you feel that you should show up at this place because the people over here have more money. Well, guess what? If there ain't but 10 people in the room, that's only 10 votes. But if you show up over here where the people have less money and they got 500 people in the room, well, guess what? That's probably a more powerful contingency base than those folks over there with some money, because they can give you some money, but the vote is still 10. If that's all that's in the room, it's still 10 votes. So that's the other thing. Real fighters know who to fight for and know where to place their fight. So if you don't know, one, who to fight for or who to fight along with, chances are you're not going to be very successful. You're not going to be very successful. And I see that over and over again as candidates put their names in the hat and run for office. I see that a lot of times when things don't go as someone planned, that they didn't go back and examine what they did or didn't do. They didn't do a SWOT analysis on that campaign, because you may decide you might want to run again in the future. But if you don't know what the mistakes you made this time around, you're probably going to make those same mistakes again, and you're probably going to fall short. So falling short sounds a little bit better than that L word. Just a tad bit better than the L word. So if you're going to fight, have you taken a look at what's going on in your local community to see, you know, because all elections are local, regardless of what level it is. At the end of the day, it's all about your local community. So have you checked to see what local issues are out here? And since you may have fallen short with the last election, have you taken a look at those local issues and decided, okay, there are 3 top issues that I'd like to see some changes in? So for those of you who are going through depression or feel like there's no hope or what have you, I just want to share with you there is still hope and there is still time to fight. And you can take a fight to your local school board, to your local city council, to some boards and commissions, but there is still places where you can fight. You may not have succeeded in one race, but that does not deter you from identifying a good fight, getting in that good fight, and working until you win somewhere else. So I chose, after the election was over, to continue my fight. I did not choose to take flight and say, okay, I've had enough. I did not like the way the election turned out. So I'm just going to pack up, close down the house, sell it, whatever, and take off and leave. For me, that was not an option because there was enough things right here in my local community that I could get involved in to try to make a difference. And so that's what I chose to do. All right, we are at 12:30. It is time for announcements, acknowledgments, and commemorations. And we are in the month of November. November is National Diabetes Awareness Month and National Native American Month. But there's another area that we have not spent a lot of time on, and organizations that I'm a part of, they have been focusing a tremendous amount of time on Black male health in the month of November. Even though Black Male Health Month is June, they've been spending a lot of time because this is a time of year that they tend to encourage the Black male to have the colonoscopy, have his prostate checked, and look at the various types of cancers that have a tendency to be detrimental in our community. So don't forget, to our men, get your checkup. Get your checkup because we definitely want to keep you around for a bit. Now, some announcements, acknowledgments. November the 21st, and pretty much all of these are November the 21st, but November 21st, 1984, Trans Africa's Randall Robinson, Congressman, congressional delegate, I should say, because he's from Washington, D.C., and so they don't have the same type of title as other Congress people have. But Delegate Walter Fauntleroy and the U.S. Civil Rights Commissioner Mary Frances Berry are all arrested at a sit-in against apartheid at the South African Embassy in Washington, D.C. So that took place November the 21st, 1984. And Randall Robinson, as many of you know, he was a fighter for Africa. On November 21st, 1964, Yvette Diane Clarke, that was her born day. She won a seat on city council in New York. She served in the New York 11th from 2007 to 2013. Today, she is now a congresswoman for Brooklyn, New York. 11/21, 1956 is the born day of Chaka Fattah, but he was born Arthur Davenport. He's a former U.S. congressman for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from 1995 to 2016. Also on November the 21st, 1865, Shaw University was founded in Raleigh, North Carolina. November the 21st, 1654, Richard Johnson, a Black man, was granted 100 acres of land in Northampton County, can you believe it, Virginia, for importing two persons. They didn't tell you what the persons looked like. They just say he imported two persons. So basically, he was the owner of two persons. Therefore, he could become a landowner. So in 1654, they granted him 100 acres of land. I'd like to know where that 100 acres of land is today. Northampton County, Virginia. And then 11/1/1910, W.E.B. Du Bois began publishing the Crisis Monthly magazine for the NAACP. So these are some things that happened in the month of November. And next Thursday will be the 28th, so we'll close it out. I'm not sure who I'm going to talk about next week, but we have one more week in November to talk about Black history and people that we may not have heard of. But again, Yvette Diane Clark, look her up. Look her up. You know, she's kind of feisty. Look her up. And she's still serving in Congress right now. As a matter of fact, Yvette Diane Clark took her mother's seat on the city council in New York. She succeeded her mom. And okay, so getting back to the show, if we're going to fight or we're going to take flight, I think we want to determine if we're going to fight. Where are some of the places that we can make some improvements? What are some of the things that we can do? And again, if we're going to look at our local government, if we're going to look at our local cities, or we're going to look at nationally, we want to take a look at where can we have the most impact. I feel that we can have some of the most impact in our local areas. If we're looking to have people get elected to office, we need to know that those are the type of people that's going to work hard on behalf of our community. In our city, we have 3 majority non-white districts. That's District 4, 7, and 10. And you will hear me talk about these districts from now until forever, because I don't want people to get complacent and not recognize the work that was put into getting these districts, but also not get complacent with regards to, yeah, we have these districts, but anybody can run in these districts. No. If you work for something, you want to hold on to what you work for. You don't want to give it away. Because sometimes we have a habit of calling ourselves being nice, and as we're being nice, that slice of pie that we once had, and in this case 3 slices, we'll end up with no slices. And so I want to caution our community, do not get complacent, because just like you have, as they say, when you climb the ladder, you can fall back down that ladder, and the falling back down the ladder is a lot harder than climbing up that ladder. So I want to encourage you, the bigger they come, the harder they fall. I want to encourage you, don't lose what someone helped you to gain. Don't lose it. Stay focused. Understand that districts are precious. And if you don't hold on to them, someone will take them away from you. So when we're looking at where we can make improvements, we want to look at our city. We want to look at how the money is being spent. Is the money being spent in a positive way that is beneficial to our community? Is it being redirected, even though the federal government may have sent it down and said, I need you to put this in this area? Okay. And they, set up a standard. So the area has to be an area where there is low income people, or the area has to be a particular area where there is blight or things of that nature. Are we watching the dollars? And are we ensuring that the people who are on our city council or on the school board, are we ensuring that they are good stewards of those dollars? Because, see, that's our responsibility. That's where the fight comes in. That is really where the fight comes in. Because if you're just assuming that people are going to do the things that are right, that is not a good assumption. That is not a good assumption at all. You cannot assume that just because someone got elected, that they're going to do the things that are right and in your best interests. You also want to take a look at building a successful team, because no one can do everything by themselves. And what do you mean by having a fighting team? You want to have a successful fighting team. And that would be people who can attend these meetings, because you can't be everywhere. So you need to have a successful fighting team. You need to be on the same page together. And you need to be comfortable that these people are loyal to the goals and objective of the community. Because then they're trustworthy. You can begin to trust them if they're loyal to the objectives of the community. If they're loyal to the objectives of the team. You know, what's the goal of the team? If you're in a fight, you got to have a goal. As I said earlier, Muhammad Ali's goal was win all the time, every time, all the time. Every time, all the time. And we should have a similar mindset when it comes to fighting. When it comes to fighting for our children, when it comes to fighting for our community, when it comes to fighting for our neighborhoods, when it comes to fighting to make sure that our streets are paved, we have traffic lights where we need them, those sidewalks are fixed and repaired, our children have a place where they can walk and be safe, there's the proper lighting. One of the things that I have a real problem with in this city is the amount of money they spend. And then I drive at night and I'm sitting here and I am disgusted. I keep forgetting to call down to city council, to the not city council, but to the people who are responsible for roads and repairs and lighting and stuff like that. And I'm like, hopefully when I get off the phone or get off the show today, I'll remember to call and say, you have way too many places that the lighting is horrible. And if you're being paid and your staff is being paid, shouldn't there be somebody that checks on that periodically to make sure that we have the proper lighting and people can safely drive from point A to point B without there being a situation where there are parts of the road where you literally can barely see anything? The other thing is paint with the yellow, put the yellow markings that are glow in the dark. That would even be helpful. So those are the fights that you're going to have to think about, because all fights are not national. Many of them are your local fights. You also want to look at a fight of, do we have folks sitting on school board and city council that need to be removed from office? Do you have candidates that can run against those people? That's a fight. If you have folks sitting on city council or school board who are of no value to you, and the work that they're doing does not benefit your city, that is a fight. Because a lot of times people just think the only fight that they have is the president of the United States. No, most of your fights are local fights. So when you're looking at having a fight or taking flight, look at your local government. Who's serving on your city council? When are they up for re-election? For us, we have staggered elections. So every 2 years, one group is up for re-election. In the next 2 years, another group is up for re-election. That way you don't turn your whole entire school board over at one time and your whole entire city council over at one time. You turn them over in increments. They're staggered. And so you want to take a look at who you have serving. When was the last time you called them? That's another fight. When was the last time you wrote them a letter? That's another fight. And you don't always have to have a fight. Sometimes your fight is simply letting them know that you're pleased with what they're doing. So you can do that. That's a positive fight. The negative fight is when you jerking their chain and saying, wait a minute, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And we need you to vote this way on this piece of legislation, on this policy. Otherwise, we might have to reconsider if you're the type of person that needs to be sitting in that chair, or if we need to find someone else to sit in that chair. But again, in Virginia Beach, I want to encourage you to focus on District 4, 7, and 10. We have a 10-1 district system. 3 of those districts basically belong to us. That is both the city council seat and the school board seat, which in essence means we have 6 people that we can elect to office from our own community, 3 to serve on council, 3 to serve on school board. And I want that embedded in your head because, again, we are quick to give away our wins. We are quick to give away our successes. We are quick when someone comes to us and they are nice and friendly, and we're like, oh, it's okay. They might make a good person on council. If they're not from your community and you're not sending a message to your children and your grandchildren that they can serve in any place in city government, that is not a good option. It's not. It is not a good option when you have the opportunity to elect people from your own community so that your children can know people from all walks of life, but they know people, especially from your community, who are their elected officials. That's important. That's very important to your children. Why would they want to run for office if there's nobody in office that look like them? Why? Why would they want to run? But if they have 3 people sitting on school board that looks like them and 3 people on city council that looks like them, they may say, oh, as I'm deciding what I want to do later on in life, this could be an option. This could be an option of something that I may want to do. So when we're looking at the fight should be about improvements. The fight should also be about whether or not we need to keep people in office or whether or not we need to remove folks from office. That should be part of our fight. We also should look at who's in the community that is working in our best interest, because sometimes the fight is sometimes right there within the community. Do we have persons who are hogging the mic, who are hogging the media, who are profiling and styling? And if so, are those the people that we want in front of the camera? Or do we need to readdress that and have community meetings and have the woodshed moments where we take our friends and relatives and others to the woodshed and say, hey, this is not working well for us. This is not giving us the outcome we want. So sometimes we might have to fight within to make changes that's better for us in the long term. We need to find people that can work well with others. That's another fight. We tend to have these people that are out here and they can't work well with others. Some of them ran for office and didn't work well with others. Some think that they're supposed to select every people who runs for office. That's not working well with others. It isn't. It isn't working well with others when 1 or 2 people think that they are in charge of everybody that should be running for office, who we should pick, who should be in this position, who should be in that position. And we need to rein that in. It is our responsibility as a community to rein that type of attitude in. It's our responsibility as a community to rein in that attitude, that mentality. We need to rein that type of stuff in, because if we don't change that right now, then our generations that's coming behind us will have a similar attitude and will find themselves in a similar situation that we were in Virginia Beach before the 10-1 voting system came into place. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Of course it does.
So we want to make sure that we're doing the things now so that our kids won't have to work so hard later. Again, it's all about collective work and responsibility. It's all about building and maintaining our community together. It's all about that. It's all about making sure that we understand what our community's problems are and making sure that we solve those problems together. It's not for one or two people to supposedly solve problems by themselves and then come back to the majority community and say, well, I had a talk with them and this is what, we decided. We who? We who?
Was I there? Did we have anybody in the room besides you?
Exactly. So when we're fighting on all different levels. It's not one level, it's not two levels. It's a number of different levels. Okay. And I'm not going to use a terminology that I know Benita would crack up if she heard me say it. Okay. What are the other things that we want to look at when we're fighting? Are we fighting simply for personal reasons or we're fighting for the group? Are we fighting for personal reasons and for what is going to benefit us personally, or are we fighting for the overall group and the overall community? Because that tends to be another problem that we tend to have when people are in that fight or flight mode. We have people who are willing to fight, but are they willing to fight for the majority of people in their own community, or are they willing to fight for themselves to get something from the majority from the other community? Because that's detrimental as well. So we have to look at who we have in positions, because everybody don't need a position. Everybody should not be placed in a particular position, because there are people, when they get into certain positions, it tends to go to their head. They think more highly of themselves than they really ought to. And they begin to believe that they're the ones that can fix everything. Have we heard that before? I'm the one that can fix everything. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
So we have to be careful when we select people to be leaders or quasi leaders, because sometimes they begin to read their own press clippings. And when we have people in the fight, we want people who are going to fight for the whole and not for a few. We want people who are going to fight for the entire community, not for some in the community. So when we're dealing with fight and flight, we are all in this together. UJIMA is a great principle. Collective work and responsibility is a great principle. Self-determination is a great principle. Unity is another great KWANZAA principle. We need to use those principles and work them and make sure that they are intertwined and interrelated, because that is what's going to make us stronger. If we're only going to use one principle, and that's the only one we're going to use, we're going to fall short. Again, I don't like using the L word, so I'm going to say fall short. So we didn't make the mark. We didn't meet the mark. We didn't cross the finish line. We fell a little bit short. But using all of these principles collectively, that collective work and responsibility, that Kujichagulia, self-determination, umoja, that unity, all of those things combined strengthens us as a people, strengthen us when we're in this fight. Strengthen us, as scripture says, to put on the whole armor. When you put on that whole armor, that's kind of like the 7 principles of KWANZAA. Okay, you got that faith principle in there too. Don't want to leave that out. You don't want to leave that out. But you want to also make sure that you have that creativity principle in there. You want to make sure you have that purpose principle in there, because those things allow you to stay on track to meet your goal when you're in this fight or flight mindset. Because again, when you feel like things did not happen the way that you wanted, you can become a little depressed. You can want to step away from things. And you can do that too. You can step away, but I would not tell you to permanently step away. You know why? Because tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another issue. Tomorrow is another fight. And you want to be able to get up, move forward, and fight regardless of outcomes. Because you have to be the one that determines what the next outcome is going to be, and it's going to take work. You're not going to be able to make it happen by sitting around crying in your milk. I don't drink milk, but people like to say that, crying in your milk. So, so for those of you who thought it was A-okay to be depressed, or A-okay to give up, that's not an option, baby. We've been through this before. Not just one time, not two times. We have been through this again and again and again. Thanks, Bernita. I'm glad it makes sense. We have to make sure that we stay in this fight. We have to make sure that we stand on principles, on both spiritual principles, but also the principles of KWANZAA are simply just community principles that we can stand on together. You know, they're just simple principles. And again, if we know what our purpose is, and if we know deep in our heart of hearts that our purpose is to make things better for our children that are coming behind us, we should have some fight in us. Okay? We should have some fight in us. And if we don't, we need to get examined. We need to get examined. We need to go to the doctor and get examined, because what's going on right now and what may be going on in the future, it's going to be up to us to make sure that we do some things and put some processes in place to make it better for our next generation. We got to have that self-determination. We cannot give up every time there's a hiccup. We got to keep being determined to fight a little bit more. The other thing is unity is key. Umoja, that's key. Because if we can't trust one another, that's a problem. That's a problem when we're in this fight. So for those of you who we can't trust, we're going to have to move you out the way. Because this is a serious fight, and you putting my children, my grandchildren, and my family at risk if I can't trust you. So with that being said, we're coming up to the close of the program today. I hope this information was helpful. I always try to think of it from a standpoint of all walks of life. I don't try to come in here and try to be above anybody, below anybody. I figure that we are all in this together. And as long as we work together in unity, as long as we're willing to take that fight to the people that we need to take the fight to, we have a chance of winning. But if we're not willing to fight, we're not going to succeed. It's as simple as that. I don't have to put an L behind it. I don't have to put a W behind it. But if we're not willing to take that fight to our government, to those who are in positions of power, we're not going to win, and we're not going to succeed. We're not going to succeed for ourselves or for our children. So with that being said, it is GA for Justice. We're closing out today's message, fight or flight. UJIMA, collective work and responsibility. Our fight is with all of us together collectively. And with that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
No doubt about it. Well, let me correct you now. Are you gonna? That's Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thursday. You know what? We'll probably play another show, a previous show.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
let's play the one that says lose my number.
Lose my number. Okay, lose it. I
Let's
can't,
do
because
that
if I
one.
lose your number, I can't have a GA for Justice show. I know what you mean.
Yes,
But
that's right.
no,
It is Thanksgiving next week.
yeah,
Okay.
but we'll still be on for the show,
Mhm.
pre-recorded something.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to schedule and you'd be like, you didn't mention.
It's funny because I call it Giving Thanks Day versus that other name that the
Yeah, the other people.
so-called pilgrims use.
Um,
I try to stay away from that, and I try to say Giving Thanks Day, and I think of
yeah,
every day is a day of giving thanks.
yeah.
Mhm.
Giving a blessing and receiving one.
Absolutely.
Just got to know who hand. Sometimes you just got to know who hand you're taking it from.
Absolutely.
Well, nevertheless, always a great show. She do it each and every Thursday right here on WVDM, the GA for Justice, the community activist Georgia Allen. And don't forget to share this with some of your friends, your family members, because the numbers count, because it creates an algorithm for people to look for the show. And remember, it's work that's for the community, but most of all, for the future generation, our youth. GA for Justice. Until next week, Miss Georgia, thank you so much. Bye-bye, y'all.
Can't see Dr. King. This is Dr. King, you
Oh,
guys. Sorry.
all right. Hey, put it up again. I'm going to take my...
All right. Dr. King.
That way we
That's
got...
what happens when you're short, trying to
Hey, but they always told me good thing come in small packages. Just don't feel bad. You still you're doing more work than the average person that's 5'9".
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. And see you next week, even though it might be on it might not be live.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, another show have ended. And don't forget to tell a friend. GA for Justice with your community activist, Georgia Allen, on WVDM.